I was 8 years old when a rich kid from the city transferred into our class. The outfit he wore that first day could have bought an entire house in our neighborhood. The sneakers on his feet were worth $40,000. And then, in that same moment, I saw something I never could have imagined. Glowing comment streams started floating across my field of vision. Why is that mean-spirited frenemy Ethan showing up so soon? Is he just going to start picking on James right away? Poor James, he really has it rough. Another one drifted by a second later. If the male lead doesn't suffer through hardship now, where is his childhood trauma supposed to come from? And how is he supposed to grow into that withdrawn, desperate for love mess later? And how is Ava supposed to show up and save him, then spend her whole life tangled up with him? Too bad that after they finally get together, she will always have Ethan in the back of her mind. And James is just Ethan's stand-in from start to finish. I turned and stared at Ethan, who had just dropped into the seat beside me, and I was completely stunned. Before I could speak, he slapped his lunch container onto the table and barked at me, full of arrogance. "Go wash this out." But when I looked down at the untouched meal inside his container, it was packed with golden crispy fried chicken and a generous heap of steaming white rice. My eyes burned with tears I refused to let fall. "Shut up already. Stop flooding the feed with these comments." He is not some vicious frenemy. He is that moon hanging in the night sky, lighting up the darkness, and he is lighting it up for me. The year I turned 8. That year, a kid named Ethan transferred into our class. The clothes on his back could have bought a house in our part of town. The shoes on his feet alone were worth $40,000. That same year, all our broken-down wooden desks and chairs were replaced with brand-new ones, the kind I had only ever seen in textbook pictures. Every classroom got air, conditioning, and computers installed. Even our terrifyingly strict principal was strangely courteous to him. But even with the classrooms all spruced up, this rich kid still wore a permanent scowl of annoyance. They assigned him the seat next to mine, and the moment he sat down, he tilted his chin up and looked down his nose at me. "Clean my desk." At lunchtime, some kids went to the cafeteria, others went home. I stayed put, not moving an inch. Ethan's housekeeper arrived with an elegant lunch container and placed it on his desk. The food was a feast for the eyes and nose, and I caught myself staring. I forced down 2 huge gulps of cold water, hoping that Cheap Trick would fool my rumbling stomach. This little heir from a wealthy family barely touched his food before he lost interest. He nudged the container toward me with a look of disgust. "I hate wasting food. You finish it." Just that morning, I had read a sentence in my textbook about food offered with contempt. But I was too hungry to care, so I polished off every last grain of rice. Ethan sat there, chin propped on his hand, watching me eat. When I was done, he tossed a bottle of icy mineral water at me, condensation still beating on the plastic. "Drink that, then go wash the container." When I came back with the clean container, I saw 2 girls hovering around Ethan. One of them propped her chin on her hand and asked, "Why are you sitting with James?" The other jumped right in. "You are new here, so you probably don't know, but his dad is a gambling addict. I heard he steals money, gets caught all the time, and ends up at the station every other day. With a dad like that, the son is probably cut from the same cloth. Aren't you worried he will swipe your stuff?" In that instant, clutching the container, my hands went cold. I stood frozen in the doorway, too scared to step forward. I lifted my eyes and found Ethan looking directly at me. I felt a sudden urge to turn around and bolt, to find a hole and disappear where no one could see me. But Ethan got to his feet, tall and striking as if a spotlight had found him. He frowned and said, "Come here." I was sure he was furious. I figured he was disgusted that I had handled his container with my dirty hands, and my heart was hammering. I quickly set the container back on his desk, dropped my gaze, and stammered, "I am sorry, I did not mean to keep it from you." But this rich kid didn't toss the container in the trash. He just looked at me, his expression calm, and asked, "Have you ever stolen anything?" I panicked and shook my head like crazy. "No, I have never stolen anything. Before I could finish, Ethan had already turned to those 2 girls and cut them off coldly. He says he hasn't. If you're going to accuse people, you better have proof. If you don't, that is a false accusation, and you can be taken in by the cops. The two girls jumped in fright and were about to sneak off. Ethan stopped them. "Hey, apologize to James, or I'm calling the cops and having you both picked up." 8-year-olds are terrified of the word police. Honestly, I was always running to the station over little things, and they usually could not be bothered with that kind of nonsense. But they did not know that. They were scared stiff and mumbled a shaky apology. Ethan, still holding the container, glanced around at everyone. His usually smug face actually showed a rare hint of satisfaction. "James, from today on, you're my guy." That afternoon after school, he pulled every piece of bread and snack from his bag and shoved them all into my arms. "I do not want these. They are yours." But that night, my father came home drunk and hit me again. He rummaged through my bag and took every single thing. I lay on my makeshift bed of flattened cardboard boxes and secretly fished out the one piece of chocolate I had managed to hide. Under the pale moonlight filtering through the window, I unwrapped it and took a bite. The chocolate was sickeningly sweet, and the moon was painfully bright. The next day, I had a fever and could not make it to school. That afternoon, while classes were still going, Ethan showed up at my place with the police. My father was taken away again for what they called re-education, and I was taken to the hospital. Ethan stood by my bed, looking a bit dejected, and mumbled, "I am sorry. I do not have the power to change much yet." After I got out of the hospital, I went back to class. One day, Ethan dropped a thick stack of practice sheets on my desk and told me to do them all. And right then, those comment streams flooded my vision again. Why is this vicious frenemy Ethan showing up so soon again? Is he just here to humiliate James? Why does our male lead have to do his homework and fetch his things? This is a total assault on his dignity. James has it so rough. But a few others said, if the male lead does not go through this, how will his childhood trauma shape him into that moody, desperate for love mess? And then Ava comes along to save him, and they are tangled up forever. When I saw those comments again afterward, I could not help sneaking another look at Ethan. He wore a tailored three-piece suit, and the gold watch on his wrist flashed so bright in the sun it hurt to look at. Noticing my stare, Ethan calmly pulled out his lunch container and ordered me from his usual lofty perch. "Go wash this out." I looked down into that container of untouched fried chicken and white rice. My eyes burned again. He bought 2 sets of workbooks, and every day, whatever meal he did not want, he would push it my way. It was always something filling, like bread or whatever would keep me going. Ethan was not some vicious frenemy. He was that moon in the night sky, slowly lighting up the dark, and he was lighting it just for me. I became Ethan's guy. From all those spoiler-filled comment streams, I slowly pieced together the truth. This world was just some melodramatic novel about stand-ins and substitutes. And I was that pathetic substitute male lead with the tragic ending. The woman who was supposed to be my wife was already written in to spend the rest of her life drowning in regret. My father was a gambling addict, and my mother worked in the red light district. She was caught cheating on my dad, fled in panic, and got hit by a car, dying on impact. My childhood was a disaster until I met Ava. I saw her as the only light in my life. But after we finally got together, her heart was still with her first love who was overseas. Ethan. Between him and me, I was just his stand-in. When the real prince, Ethan, came back from abroad, he started coming after me, humiliating me in every way possible. In the end, I was diagnosed with stomach cancer and slowly wasted away. Only then did Ava realize, far too late, that the one she truly loved had always been me, even though she later lived a life of wealth and luxury. With suitors lining up around the block, she still could not forget me. So she chose to stay single forever, spending the rest of her days in guilt and regret. But I knew the truth. The comment streams were just describing the plot of a book. This right here was my actual life. Ethan had been training in boxing and martial arts since he was little, and I stuck by his side, passing him water and holding his towel. When I had the time, I picked up a few moves myself. In plain terms, he paid to have me around. My father took the cash and stopped caring whether I lived or died. The more comments I watched, the stranger things became. The comment streams started shifting. Someone typed, "Wait, this plot seems off. Isn't James supposed to be malnourished and end up with stomach cancer?" He looks healthier and stronger now. What happened? Others chimed in. James used to be such a pushover. What is with the change? A few offered reassurance. Take it easy. That is because he has not met Hannah yet. It is all build-up. Hannah is absolutely insufferable when she first shows up. She is always at odds with the male lead. But later she has a complete change of heart and wants to be glued to him. The first day of middle school, I walked Ethan to his elite private school. I wiped his desk clean and arranged all his supplies neatly. I was just about to head out. Because I could not afford the tuition, this kind of place was never meant for someone like me. But Ethan spotted me heading out and yelled at me, incredulous. Stop. You are my brother. Where do you think you're going? Ethan covered every cent of my tuition, and I moved into the dorm with him. Everything seemed to be getting better. That very day, a new student transferred in. Her name was Hannah. The comment streams exploded. The frenemy to lovers arc is about to start. Hannah is finally here. Others typed, does James really think he can escape Hannah by changing schools? This is fate. Sure, Hannah is soft and chubby right now. But beauty cannot be defined. She is a hidden gem. Once she slims down, she will blow everyone away. As our homeroom teacher introduced Hannah at the front of the class, Ethan let out a muttered curse from his seat. He grumbled something else, but I did not catch it. Soon enough, Hannah was assigned to the seat directly in front of mine. By middle school, everyone was hitting puberty. That whole gender awareness thing started getting real. But it was not about biology or psychology. It was more about physical strength and taking sides. It was not like elementary school anymore, when we all pitched in to move desks together. Now the girls just assumed that boys should handle all the heavy lifting. Whenever there was furniture to move, they would pull a mass vanishing act. And more boys were fed up with being guilt-tripped. The breaking point came over something small. One day, the teacher asked our class president, a girl, to get 2 boys to haul a huge stack of exam papers back from the office. The boy flat out refused. Why don't you get girls to do it? The class president shot back, unapologetic. Because boys are stronger, what is wrong with a little work? Before the guy could answer, Ethan jumped in with a cold laugh. So because boys have muscles, that means we are built to be your pack mules? You walked back from the office empty-handed. Did your muscles just give out? After that, it became the unwritten rule, boys help boys and girls help girls. At first, I kept my head down and tried to stay out of it. But Hannah, the girl in front of me, seemed born to pick fights with me. One day after class, I was zoning out at the blackboard, running through a problem in my head. She suddenly spun around and barked at me. What are you looking at, creep? What kind of degenerate stares at a girl like that? Her voice was so shrill it pulled everyone's attention right over. Ethan was not in the room at the time. I was so fired up that I jabbed a finger right at her face and shot back. Hannah, which one of your eyes saw me looking at you? If you keep losing it for no reason, I swear I will slap you. Hannah snorted. If you are not staring, why are you so defensive? Got a bad case of main character syndrome? A guy in the back row laughed. Wake up, sweetheart. Guys look at girls all the time, but trust me, for you, it is really not that big a deal. Another girl piled on. Look how worked up he is. If he was not checking you out, why would he be so mad? I opened my mouth to argue. Hannah's eyes suddenly lit up like she had struck gold. She lunged across, grabbed my pen off my desk, and yelled, "This pen is blinking. It is blinking. This pen is blinking. There has to be a camera in here. You creep, you are filming me." Rage shot through me. I reached for it to snatch it back and set things straight. But before I could, she hurled it to the floor. Then she slammed her foot down on it. It cracked cleanly under her shoe. The comment stream kept flooding across my vision. Okay, Hannah is being dramatic right now, but she is a girl. A little attitude is normal. But this time, I had no more patience. I shot to my feet. I swung my arm and landed a full force slap across Hannah's face. The crack was like a whip through air. It hit like a thunderclap, and the whole room went dead silent. Her face was already swelling before our eyes. I had trained with Ethan for years. Even the coach said I had a gift. That slap was my version of showing her full respect. The comment streams burst apart like fireworks. Wait, where's our cowardly, pathetic male lead? No, his character is completely ruined. That slap just now was way too harsh. How was he supposed to follow that suffering and finally winning a girl's heart redemption arc after this? But the truth was, I never wanted to live inside some ridiculous, predetermined story. All I wanted was for people who did wrong to actually face the consequences. The only thing he cared about was not having to pay any settlement money. Hannah's family had money and influence. Someone like him would never dare cross them. The teacher jabbed a finger at me and yelled, "Motherless brat with no upbringing. Doing perverted things at this age, you are headed straight for prison." I stood in that office. The windows were shut, but I still felt cold drafts leaking in from everywhere, just like the hollow emptiness spreading through my chest. Was I wrong? I had hit Hannah, but I could not fight everyone. I hid the bruises as best I could. I did not notice the familiar silhouette that flickered past outside. I still had some pride back then. I did not want Ethan to see me like that. Monday's assembly and flag ceremony. Ethan, representing the school, spoke at the podium. Under the blazing sun, he was radiant, his voice self-assured and proud. Even in the same uniform, he seemed to exist in another world entirely. Hannah looked over and rolled her eyes. She sneered. "See that? You are just a sewer rat. Now do you see the difference between you and Ethan? Don't think you are his friend just because you trail after him. And do not fantasize about being some prince everyone adores. You are just trash, a waste of space with a pathetic shred of self-esteem." I dropped my head, the same head I once held high just to meet Ethan's eyes. Maybe I really was just the kind of person destined to die young. Die in the dirt, left to rot, forgotten by everyone. Or why did I have to stand next to him? And then I heard Ethan's voice from the podium. His voice rang out like a hammer on concrete, sharp and clear. He was at the microphone, speaking loud and clear. "A few days ago, I was falsely accused by a classmate of mine, Hannah. I was just staring at the blackboard, minding my own business. But she claimed I was harassing her and staring at her. And she said my pen had a pinhole camera in it and I was filming her. Then, without even asking, she smashed it. So what now? Do I need to sit through class with my eyes closed?" And the teacher did not ask for the facts. She just went off on me, said I had no manners, called me a creep. So today, in front of everyone, I want to ask, am I a pervert? Nobody expected Ethan to bring all that up in front of everyone. The entire school exploded into murmurs. Students whispered back and forth, voices swelling everywhere. Everyone in our class swiveled to look at Hannah. Her face froze, and you could actually see her cheeks twitching. The principal's face went completely dark. He shot a quick, nervous glance toward the side of the stage. The ceremony ended in an awkward, strained silence. For the first time, there were no long, boring official remarks. Everyone was sent off in a hurry. I found out later. Ethan's parents, the donors who had funded 2 entire school buildings, had just happened to be there that day. They were absolutely livid after they heard everything. Ethan was called to the office, and Hannah and I were brought in too. Our teacher, who had been so vicious just days before, was now tight-lipped and careful. She spoke first. "Principal, I never said any of that about Ethan. Ethan is a top student with an impeccable attitude. How could I have talked to him that way? I only said a few harsh words to James." The moment she finished, Ethan stepped forward, spine straight, voice calm and cutting. He spoke, a faint smile on his face. "Principal, what makes James any different from me? Why should he be the one getting cursed at and humiliated? Is our school's philosophy to allow girls to make false accusations about boys? To replace the facts with gender bias? To assume a boy is guilty just for being male?" That was the first time I ever saw Ethan drop all pretense of courtesy. The principal wiped his forehead despite there being no sweat. He glanced nervously at Ethan's parents, who were standing off to the side, watching silently. He laughed awkwardly and stammered, "Of course not. Our school would never tolerate any form of punishment or humiliation toward students." That day I watched. Our homeroom teacher, who had been so high and mighty, finally lowered her head. She apologized to me. Hannah was made to apologize publicly. The teacher was fired that day, and Hannah was transferred out. Throughout the whole thing, Ethan's parents barely gave me a cold glance. The sun blazed down, so bright it hurt. Ethan turned to me. James, do you see that? They apologize today not because you were right and not because of me. It is because of who my parents are. So we have to get stronger. Strong enough that no one dares mess with us. Taking control of your own fate. That is what living really is. That day, I looked up at the burning sun and thought to myself, I would never live as some dramatic novel's miserable male lead, enduring all that pain for a woman, stumbling through life, only to die in the most miserable way. That was also the day I learned. Everything I had now had come from Ethan's pocket alone. It had nothing to do with his family. I was shocked. Ethan just smiled, his eyes startlingly bright, like they held stars. He said, because I think you're worth it. I've always had good instincts. In my eyes, my friend here is no ordinary person. Think of it as an early investment. The word friend echoed in my head again and again. In a heart that had been barren for years, it was as if tiny green sprouts had finally emerged. Because of those words, I swore to myself I would never let him down. As time went on, Ethan got busier. He stopped training with me, and I barely saw him at school. The next time I saw him was at the school talent show. He wore a custom suit, standing beneath the stage lights. He gleamed like a star. That moment, I was reminded again of the space between us. But this time, after he finished his piano piece and walked off, I still went backstage to find him. I could not help spilling everything that had happened lately. My teacher said I was good at math and brought me to a competition, and I got third place. Ethan grinned and clapped me on the shoulder. That is amazing, James. You are incredible. Back then, I did not get it. Why the pride in his eyes was just as strong as if he were celebrating his own win. Ethan kept enrolling me in martial arts and fighting classes. But if he set it up, he had his reasons. I was his chosen brother, so my job was to get good enough to make him proud. Every year during the school physical, Ethan dragged me along. He said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. You are my brother, so of course you're coming. The results came back, and we were both fine. Sometimes I felt like he worried more about my results than his own. If anything was even slightly off, he would pull the doctor aside and question them thoroughly. I asked him why he was so anxious. He kept up his usual princely act. Got a problem with me caring about my brother? If he gets sick, who is going to run my errands? But by then, Ethan barely even asked me to do things for him anymore. The year we moved from middle school to high school. Thanks to my math scores, I got into the same elite private high school as him. But they placed us in different homerooms. The school was full of rich kids from powerful families. I was the only real kid from the wrong side of the tracks. After the first round of exams, I came in first overall. Standing in front of the bulletin board, I spotted Ethan across the hall. His eyes scanned the list and paused at my name. His lips curved up just barely. There was more than pride in that smile. There was a quiet relief I could not explain. Right then, I realized he was keeping something from me. I ran my eyes down the board and found Ethan's name quickly. His scores were nothing to laugh at. They were solid. When he turned, he spotted me. I waved, about to head over. But the bell rang right then. His class was on one end, mine on the other. The crowd swept us apart. Still, I saw him clearly. Ethan flashed me a thumbs up. His lips moved. I read what he said. You are amazing. In high school, Ethan got even busier. He was still brilliant, like a star burning bright. Even in high school, he was already launching his own company. I did not understand any of it. The only thing I could do was hit the books hard. Luckily, I did have some ability, so I poured everything into my studies. I racked up awards from one math competition after another. One time, I got back from a training camp. A few school bullies cornered me in the classroom. One of them swung a backpack at my head. I blocked it with my arm. The guy in front swore at me. James, are you looking to get yourself killed? You mess with my girl? I did not even know who this guy was, let alone who his girl was. Why did not answer? He got even madder. Grab him. If we do not break you today, you will think you are hot stuff. The others hung back at first. The ringleader sneered. What are you scared of? Ethan is not here. He is just Ethan's pet. So what if he gets roughed up? I narrow my eyes. All those years of training with Ethan had not been for nothing. A few school thugs who depended on numbers were no match for me. I grabbed whatever I could get my hands on. In seconds, every one of them was on the floor. I thought that was the end of it, but it only escalated. They started shoving dead rats into my desk. smearing glue on my seat, dropping tacks in my locker, knocking my lunch tray over in the cafeteria. Every dirty trick in the book they pulled on me. So I kept track of every single thing and gathered the proof. Then I went straight to the principal's office. Principal, I think it is time I transferred schools. It was already our senior year. The school's overall scores had not been great. But I was not just a top student. My math scores had become one of the school's crown jewels. The moment I mentioned transfer, the principal went rigid. He demanded to know what was going on. I handed over everything I'd gathered. When those guys were brought in, they still looked defiant. Standing in that office again. This time, Ethan was not by my side. But I stood tall anyway, and my voice did not waver. The principal tore into them on the spot. They got demerits and parental calls, the whole works. That's when I really understood. When you have some skill, it is not hard to stand up straight. When you have worth, the world makes room for you. But Ethan still heard what happened. He came all the way back to school. He looked tired from the travel, but his gaze was still sharp. He already had the steady, commanding presence of a grown man. He looked at me. Bro, who was messing with you? Why didn't you come to me? But this time we were eye to eye. I smiled and answered, nothing worth troubling you over. I had no idea what Ethan did behind the scenes. But from the next day, those troublemakers all disappeared from school. I put all my competition prize money on a card and tried to hand it to Ethan. But he pushed it right back. We are brothers. He said, money is just going to get in the way. You know, I did not do all this to earn a little cash from you. The moment news came that I had been admitted early, Ethan rushed back to campus. He walked up to me with a box laptop in his hand, still sealed in plastic. He shoved the box into my arms, and the weight almost threw me off balance. I fumbled, caught off guard. He frowned, annoyed. This thing was just going to sit around collecting dust. I would have tossed it eventually. You might as well have it. Take it or leave it, otherwise, it is going in the dumpster. That was the first piece of tech that was truly mine. It took me a long time to realize. That laptop had actually been a burden for him. It was the ghost of something from the past, and a goodbye he had put off too long. He untied his own knot and gave me a giant push forward at the same time. In the sunlight, he finally told me his plan. I'm going abroad, he said. I watched the sun trace a halo around him. I caught up to walk shoulder to shoulder. Congrats, I said. Ethan stopped and tilted his head to look at me. For the first time, I saw something I had not expected in his eyes, concern. I always thought that shadow of sadness in his eyes did not belong on someone his age. Sometimes I felt like when he looked at me, he was not seeing me at all. I gave him a sudden shove in the shoulder. Gotcha. He sidestepped it easily, a rare boyish grin flashing across his face. Ha, James, I did not know you had that in you. I let him have his laugh and stopped clowning. We walked side by side, the same way we used to. I spoke up. Ethan, I'm not the same James who could not even get a full meal. You could go do what you need to do. Stop worrying about me. I cannot live under your umbrella forever. I want to be a real friend who can stand beside you. Ethan smiled. His eyes gleamed with pride, and he looked like he was burning brighter under the sun. He smiled and said, looks like I was wrong. I was just afraid that after I left, you would run into trouble. He paused, then added, and your dad, you need to watch your back with him. Ethan looked like there was more on his mind. His lips moved, but nothing came out. On the first day of school, Ethan was already on a plane overseas. And again, the comment streams I had not seen in so long flickered back. Finally, we are getting to the point where the leads meet. We have waited so long. The comments kept coming. This male lead is a walking disaster. His dad is scum of the highest order. Does not even know if he is really his son. He refuses to take a paternity test. And now he wants to sell his son's kidney? Wait, which school is he attending? Stanford? I recall him being at some average state school the first time I read this. I squinted at the flood of text. Ethan's presence had kept my father away all these years. But the day I went to register for college, he cornered me. He looked older and more worn down than ever. It was obvious he had not had a single good day. But that mean glint in his eyes was sharper than ever. I had been scared of him as a kid. But now I was not scared anymore. Fresh comments rolled in. Do not go soft on him. And do not go eat with him. He is paying off gambling debts. The drink is spiked. You will wake up missing something important. I looked at the man I used to call my father. Hard to believe people still pulled this kind of thing. Then again, he was a gambler, and not the harmless kind. What wouldn't he do? I want to eat with him anyway. He pulled a warm bottle of cola from his beat-up jacket. He smiled all flattering and greasy and passed it to me. James, you really make your old man proud. I heard you got into Stanford. I remember you used to love this stuff as a kid. The only reason I had ever wanted it back then was because I saw every other kid with one, and I had never once tasted it. Whenever I would ask for it, every time I asked, Miller would answer with either his fist or a string of curses. I faked passing out. Miller hauled me into the car. When we arrived, I learned. This job was worth a solid $500,000. Once I confirmed he had gotten paid in full. That night, I took out every single person involved. They were mean, but they were no match for me. I called the cops and got a lawyer. I had Miller and his entire crew dragged into court. They were caught red-handed in a human trafficking operation. Miller got 10 years. The day Miller was sent to prison, those familiar comment streams popped up again. What has happened here? How is Ava supposed to save him now? How is the romance supposed to play out now? I thought maybe I would never have to deal with that so-called female lead after all. But that day still arrived. In this place known for being safe, a few guys cornered me at the gate. They were carrying knives. They were about to strike, and I was ready to meet them. A strikingly beautiful woman suddenly appeared out of nowhere. She looked like she walked in her own glow. I knew right away that was Ava. She had a couple of security guys trailing her. She came running and yelling, "Stop, stop right this instant." But she never got the words out. I had already grabbed the ringleader by the wrist, and in one motion flipped him over. He slammed into the ground with a heavy thud. The others froze and backed away fast. Ava's shout died in her throat. I shot her a cold look. "You telling me to stop? Mind your own business." Ava stepped back without thinking. Those thugs had numbers, but no skill. They went down easy. A couple of them actually looked ready to call me boss. I dusted off my hands and gave them a lazy glance. I don't take in strays. I did not even give Ava a second glance that day. A few days later, the Williams family's butler showed up. He slid a stand-in contract across the table. He wanted me to play stand-in for Ava. The price was $200,000 a month. I raised one eyebrow. Not a bad number. But have you ever heard of contract law? This contract is worthless on its own. Why all the formality, trying to scare me? So you can sue me for breach the second I step out of line? Sorry, I do not have time for your little princess's identity games. The comments returned. Honestly, I am loving this. James is finally not the pathetic pushover he used to be. I have always hated characters like Ava. Since I needed to work, I chose to live off campus. I was in my rented room that day. Ava showed up at my door herself. She was dressed head to toe in the latest brand names. She wrinkled her nose the second she stepped in and looked around my cramped place with open disdain. She rolled her eyes and said, "A broke loser like you sure has some nerve. What, not enough money? Just play Ethan convincingly and behave like my little puppy, and I will even bump up the pay." I was done at that point. What kind of garbage is that? And she calls herself a female lead? She was insulting me, and she was insulting Ethan. I pulled out my phone to call the cops, but she just laughed coldly. "You're calling the cops? I would not mind putting you behind bars myself." With that, she yanked open her collar and added coolly, "At that point, it will be hard for you to prove you did not try anything on me." She sneered. "You have two choices. Sign or end up in jail." She was insane, a complete psycho. My forehead tightened and rage burned in my chest. She was out of her mind. The comment stream exploded. "Ava is vile. She will accuse him of assault just because he will not play her little dog. The cops and the law just do not apply to her, huh?" Others added, "And you think there are not people like this in real life?" I want to jump into this story and smack Ava myself. And the thing is, so did I. But clearly, that was not the moment. So I switched gears and put on a greasy smile. "Miss Williams, the whole puppy dog game is kind of boring. How about something a little more interesting?" I raised an eyebrow. Something outdoors exposed. Ava's eyes went wide, and a strange look flickered across her face. She bit her lip and purred. "James, you are so naughty." I like it. I honestly did not get it. How did someone this shallow, self-absorbed, and messed up end up as the female lead? If Ethan ever ended up with her, he would probably be sick to his stomach. Ava and I drove out to the boonies. I drove, and I was the one who brought the rope. In this world, when it came to the female lead, the cops just disappeared. So I would have to handle things myself. Having trained with Ethan all these years, I had never been more grateful than at that moment. We were in the middle of nowhere, and there were no cops. This road was the end of the line for Ava. She was still blushing, thinking we were about to get into some twisted fantasy. I grabbed her and hauled her out of the car. I did not give her a second to react. I raised my hand and slapped her twice hard, one on each cheek, quick and sharp. She went out cold on the spot. The comment streams went crazy. This is the outdoor fantasy? I signed up for this? Others flooded in. Those 2 slaps were so satisfying. Thank God Ethan pulled him back from that pathetic path. I wiped off her makeup and smeared face. Then I bound her tight to a tree with a rope. I splashed water on her to bring her around. Outdoor hardcore, was it? When she came to and saw where she was, Ava shrieked, "James, how dare you do this to me? I will have you killed. Your whole family will pay for this." I ignored her manic threats. I took out a knife and ran the flat of it over her skin. I recorded everything. I said, "If you ever pull that vile trick on me again, I will let the whole world see what the Williams heiress is really like. Of course, if you want to walk away clean, I can arrange that too." I smiled as I said it. Ava burst into tears then and there. I pinched my nose and backed away in revulsion. She looked around and saw we were completely alone. It finally hit her. I was serious enough to kill her. She sobbed and pleaded, "I am sorry, James. I was wrong. I will never do it again, I swear. Please, let me go." I slapped her again. Pathetic. I pressed the blade against her neck. "You get near me again, and I will end you." I stripped her of all her jewelry. I sold it off for a nice pile of cash. The next day, I did the Williams butler a favor and gave him a call. I told him where to collect his mistress. I waited 2 more days. Sure enough, in this world, when it came to Ava, the cops still looked the other way. Nobody bothered me, and Ava never dared cross my path again. My senior year, Ethan came home. He was no longer the same boy. He had become someone even the Williams family did not mess with. In just 1 year, he took apart the Williams group bit by bit. The Williams family went bankrupt. Ava lost her protagonist's shield. All her dirty secrets spilled into the open. She was sentenced to prison, sewing clothes in a factory. She was no longer a threat to us. The story's script ended here. The comment streams flooded across one final time. Finished, this version is actually really good. Isn't this way better than the original? Even though the so-called main plot was finished. My life and Ethan's were far from done. I planned to keep going in math. I knew I had a real gift for it. I had won so many awards over the years. At almost every ceremony, Ethan was in the crowd. He would clap for me, his eyes full of pride and validation. Every time I took the stage, I only ever thanked one person. Thank you to my best friend, Mr. Thorne. That New Year's Eve, he bought a house. He invited me to spend the holiday with him. That night, the moon was so bright it almost felt unreal. I ate 5 full plates of dumplings, and every single bite was incredible. Once I had stuffed myself, Ethan dragged out 2 massive crates of fireworks. He handed me a match. Just like old times, half and half. We lit them. Boom! The night sky erupted with one explosion of light after another. It was like a gateway to another world was opening up above us. Ethan stared up at the sky, looking more relaxed than I had ever seen him. "James, aren't these fireworks beautiful?" I tilted my head back and watched them bloom. Bright and stunning, then gone, back to silence. And above it all, a full moon hung suspended. Brighter than the fireworks, more still than the night. Ethan seemed to be waiting for me to reply. I turned to face him and smiled. Of course they are. I did not learn until I came back that Ava had always had a boyfriend. I will be honest, I did have some feelings for her. She told me, "There is this guy who will not leave me alone. Can you pretend to be my boyfriend for a bit?" That caught me off guard, and I said yes. I had no idea that decision would push someone else off a ledge. Ava told me she and James were already over. She described him as an unstable ex who stalked her and scared her. She looked genuinely tormented when she talked about it. I had never met James. So, of course, I leaned toward believing Ava. Why did I not know? was that the people we both knew had been stepping on James to get close to me. They had been going after him behind his back. One night, I dropped Ava off after drinks. She was completely plastered. That was the first time I saw him. A guy who looked a little bit like me. Maybe about 50%. But his eyes were different. Those eyes held a bottomless sadness. It was raining that night. It looked like he had been standing out there for hours. He handed me a towel. Then he turned quietly and made me a bowl of hot soup without a word. He smiled at me, and it was a bitter one. He said he would be out of my way soon enough. His back looked hollow as he walked away, like a lost dog. It was only then that I started to wonder. Maybe James was not as awful as Ava had said, but I did not dig deeper. I did not learn the rest until later from someone else. James had just been Ava's stand-in, because she loved me that much, or so she claimed. I started digging into it piece by piece, and that is when I learned. James had stayed with her not out of love, but because he had no choice. It was absurd, like some sick joke, and crazy enough to make you want to scream. That is when it hit me. So in that warped love story, I was the frenemy. But I did not want to be the one standing in James's way, especially not in front of a man with honor and heart. So I asked James what he actually wanted. I helped him break free. I got him a job, and I helped him go after what he actually wanted to study. What I did not expect was that when I cut Ava off and pulled James out of her grip, she accused me of breaking her heart, and Lucina Williams let herself be used as a weapon. She went after the heart of my family's business. In the end, we lost everything. James and I broke and empty-handed. We moved to a small town down south. We took whatever work we could find just to keep going. We worked all day and played games together at night. Honestly, that time was not so bad. But James kept losing weight, until one day I realized he had been coughing up blood in secret. I took him to the hospital that same night. It was stage 4 stomach cancer. He looked at me with nothing but regret. I did not mean to get sick, Ethan, but I think this time I'm going first. I told him I was afraid, but he just smiled and said, "It does not hurt. Really, it does not." Of course it hurt. He had been through so much. He had just gotten used to hurting. In those last weeks, we stopped leaving the house. We stayed in that cramped apartment and played through every game we had never finished. We wanted to leave ourselves with no regrets. Almost every cent went to his meds. One time, the graphics card fried. We did not even have the money to repair it. That is when I made up my mind to go after Ava and make the Williams family pay up. But James saw right through me. He shook his head. "Ethan, I never had a single good New Year's my whole life. And I never got to watch fireworks. New Year's is almost here. Can we wait until after the holiday?" New Year's Eve, I learned to make dumplings from a recipe I found online. They were a mess. They all fell apart in the pot. The filling and water turned into one soupy mess. It looked terrible. It was barely edible. But that night, James ate a whole bowl. He grinned and said, "Ethan, I did not know you had this in you. I want these dumplings again next year." I laughed and said, "Done. Next year, I will make you a whole feast." After we ate, I brought out the cheap fireworks I'd saved up for. We walked to the concrete patch next to our building. He sat in his wheelchair, watching me with a wide grin. I walked over, crouched, and lit the fuse. Boom! A brilliant burst of light flowered across the dark sky. I turned to ask him, "James, aren't they beautiful?" But before he could see that light I had set off just for him, his eyes had already shut. They never opened again. Life does not come with a script. It only comes with souls who refuse to give in. Do not let the noise of others define who you are, and never play second fiddle in someone else's story. James and Ethan's story teaches us that when you start to grow strong, the world will make room for you. May you also break the chains of so-called destiny and, through all the noise around you, be the clearest light in your own life. The moon was bright that night because it shone down on the one person who finally stopped letting the world decide who he was.